I have discovered in my model flying and my fishing that sometimes small details really do matter. The winter of 22-23, I built a GTS Falcon E36. I made many flights, but not enough before taking it to the 2023 Nats in Muncie, Indiana. It flew pretty good, but the power pattern seemed to go bad after about 6 seconds on occasion, and I hadn't tested it for longer motor runs. This is the second plane I had built for a Cobra motor. Before that, like with my old Pearl, I used that 1806 motor, which had nowhere near the power that the newer motors had. Flying those slower, older planes, I had plenty of crashes, but the electronic components always worked good. But then again, I wasn't pushing the current through like I am now. After the Nats, I noticed different times I try to fly my Falcon and start up the motor, and it wouldn't start. It would just kind of jerk and not hardly turn over. But sometimes it would work, so the problem was intermittent. So, of course, first I thought it was a bad connection, and that could have been part of it. Well, here's an example of what it would do. And here's another example where it was just kind of beeping and moving back and forth. So I think the bad connections were part of it, but it turned out that more of the problem was my ESC was shot, but it would work some of the time. In talking to innovative designs, which I can't say enough good about, I decided to try a 20 amp ESC as opposed to the 11 amp Cobra I'd been using. One of the things I learned that the draw is dependent a lot on the propeller that you use. To go along with my 20 amp badass ESC, I got the programming module, which really was pretty reasonable, and it has a lot of functions. It can test batteries too, as well as setting the parameters. I also purchased a watt meter, and it was really eye-opening to see how some propellers were drawing, close to 20 amps, while on a different propeller with less pitch might only draw, a little bit over 10 amps. How I had built the pylon on the Falcon, I couldn't get at all the electronics, and I had to rip part of the sides off to get in there to work on it. Anyhow, that was a valuable lesson, so I just patched it together with some thin plywood and took it out to fly. Well, actually, I had done that before this when I thought it was just a bad connection, and I thought it was running at home, and I get out to fly, and then it started doing that sputtering again. But now I've got the new ESC, and I just think it's going to work perfect, but I failed to test my RDT. Well, luckily I set my motor for a really short run and the DT at just 10 seconds, but a couple of times it hit the ground a little bit hard on the glide. So I took it home and I put in a different E36 timer. I just tested it and couldn't make it bind. It just wouldn't bind. So this is needed to get the RDT portion of the timer working. The other functions work fine, but I had no RDT. So with the new timer in place, I go to test it, and I find out my servo was going the wrong direction. It was the same servo used in the other timer, But with the BMK timer, you can easily reverse that. The instructions are in the manual. So at a recent evening, the wind dropped down to almost nothing, so it was a good time to test. I had the timer set for longer than I had intended to, so I had to use the RDT to stop it. Well, on this flight, I really lucked out when I did the DT because it came so close to coming down on a garden stake. I'm going to switch from using the old folding props to using like a 6.4 or 6.5 fixed propeller. I think I just kept using those folding propellers because I knew the prop wasn't going to break, but that really doesn't seem to be an issue, and I don't even have a landing skid on this airplane. When I tested with my watt meter that folding prop, it was hitting like 18 amps at the start, which really is too much for that 11 amp. The 20 amp ESC, it should be okay, but I still like using less current. I moved to a different part of the field that has a few less obstacles to hit on landing. And I changed the motor run from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. By now, no doubt the battery was running down some. I hadn't changed it out, but yet it was still pulling pretty well. The trim of the plane seems to have changed, and it was going too much left. I dialed in some rudder trim, but it still wasn't quite enough. The mylar covering needs some tightening, but I still wonder if that's rigid enough. My plan is to add some diagonal ribs and to cover it with polyspan. This plane is really getting heavy for competition, but I really like to use it just to learn from. The tiny servo that came with the kit, the gear stripped out, so I have this other servo just epoxied on the boom. I'd like to replace that with a servo inside the pylon in the future. In conclusion, these issues have been a little frustrating, but they have also forced me to learn much more about the setup of an electric E36, and I'm sure I'll have better luck in the future. I think with the timer that I resoldered it and probably got it really hot, besides the extra load on it when I had too large a prop. At some point I would like to design my own E36 based on the good things I have found in different planes. Thanks for watching this rather long video.